up, y'all, and welcome to the first ever Flex Friday. We're being hip. We're calling it Flex Friday.
Flex Friday.
Alliteration is cool, and that's what we're going with today. I'm here with my buddy Andy again. Andy, how you doing, man?
Good, man. It's down here in beautiful Monroe, Louisiana. Enjoying a nice drive-through daiquiri. Getting ready to make some picks for week 2.
We got the Adam Scheffner vibe. Andy in the hotel room. He's just on the go. We are lucky to have him here.
On the road, man. We're out here catching alligators. We're out here drinking daiquiris. We're out here playing fantasy football, living the dream.
That is the dream, man. Alligators and daiquiris. So today, what are we going to do on Flex Friday? Basically, we're going to each go over 5 guys we think are very good flex players to target. We're also going to each touch on 1 QB and 1 tight end. We are not going to talk about guys that you should obviously be starting. We're going to cover some guys with some good matchups who are maybe on the edge and deciding why. So to kick it off, Andy, who is your first player for Flex Friday today?
So my first guy is a man named Zay Jones. Now, it might not be the sexiest name out there, but I think he has positioned himself as the wide receiver 2 in this offense. He was in on 89% of snaps last week. He had 7 targets and a beautiful toe tap touchdown. I think this is going to be a high-powered offense. They're playing the Chiefs this week with the highest over-under on the week at 51.5. So both teams are expected to score points. The line's pretty close. And the Chiefs allowed the 6th most passing yards last week. So I think this is going to be a game where Trevor Lawrence is going to ball. I think that Calvin Ridley can have a good game here. I think that Zay Jones is going to be a great play if you're deciding between him there and the flex. And I think the Chiefs are going to bounce back this week, whether Kelsey's in or not. I don't think Kadarius Toney is going to have 4 drops. You might not have the opportunity to have 4 drops if Patrick Mahomes doesn't want to throw to him. So I think it's going to be a back and forth game, and just give me somebody on that offense.
Yeah, I mean, I was touting Christian Kirk all offseason, and I'm hoping that turns around. But like you said, Zay Jones definitely ran as the 2. He was the guy in on 2 wide receiver sets, which may just be because he's not the slot player like Christian Kirk is. But you don't got to sell me on Zay Jones, man. I was the sole Zay Jones believer last year.
You were beating that drum.
I was beating the Zay Jones drum, trying to trade him to everyone, and then I just kept him on my team, and he just kept going off. And I was like, told you.
If you keep scoring points, I mean, there's no reason to get rid of him.
There is no reason. And I like that, man. I mean, get a piece of a high-powered offense in probably a high-flying game. So,
yeah.
My first player we got for this week is going to be a running back, and that's going to be Khalil Herbert at Tampa Bay. This isn't really an over-under play or anything, and it's nothing even crazy coming off Khalil Herbert's week 1. He had 11.4 PPR points. He did have 5 targets, which I think is something that is very helpful, especially in a PPR or half PPR league. For me, this is just believing that watching the way that game played out, I still believe Khalil Herbert is the starter. And his snaps came when the game was close. And then Roshan's snaps came when the game started to kind of get away from them.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this game can be a little closer against Tampa Bay compared to the Packers, who blew them out last week. And a closer game would tend to have the starter in for more plays, right? So what do you think about Herbert as a flex this week?
I think that's a great play this week. I mean, I'm really hoping he goes off too. I've got him in a number of leagues despite being a Packers fan. I think he's a good running back. I think this is a team that wants to run the football. I think, it's running the read option with Justin Fields. And I think getting him involved in the 5 targets too, I think was big. The fact that they're looking for him in the passing game, that gives you a nice floor mixed with like a high upside ceiling. So,
and I just think, I don't think the Bears are going to be a top 5 offense this year, but they can really only go up from last week. So let's bet on a slightly better game from them.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So who are we working with as our number 2 player for you, Andy?
So for me, it's a guy who, if he wasn't on a bench, he was probably one of the top waiver wire ads. It's Tyler Algier, who finished as the RB4 last week. And while I don't think that he's going to get the bulk of the carries for the most of the season, because he actually out-touched Bijan Robinson, which if that's still happening week 15, I will be absolutely shocked. But still this early in the season, I think they're going to give it to the guy who's got a year of experience, and they're still going to be splitting time. And this is an offense, all they want to do is run the ball. I mean, Drake London had 1 target. Kyle Pitts had one reception. I mean, they don't want to throw it. They want to pound the rock. They want to get both these guys going. He had 2 red zone opportunities. I mean, he scored 2 touchdowns. So I think that, he's going to have a good game this week against my Green Bay Packers. I love the Packers. They played great on defense last week, but historically, their defense has really struggled against the run. And so I'm really nervous this week with Bijan, with Algier, if Cordero Patterson's back in the mix, that this is going to be a nasty, nasty game where I think the Falcons as a whole are just going to run the ball.
If you're basing your opinion on last week, there is nothing to not like about Tyler Algier. He looked great. He not only got the touches, but it looked like he earned them and deserved them. Like, as good as Bijan was, you can't watch Algier and be like, that was a bad play. Like, he ran hard, and like, if Bijan's going to be split out, someone still has to be in the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, they can have an offense where both these guys are on the field and be successful. And as long as they're winning games and being successful, they have no reason to change it. And Algier's a good football player. It's just, Bijan is so hyped and is so talented, but there's room for both of these guys in this offense.
Yeah, 100%. So my number 2, if Khalil Herbert was my floor flex of the week, I'm going my ceiling flex of the week next, and that's going to be my boy Rashid Shaheed.
Hey.
Going up against, let me get this right, the number 1 pass defense in Carolina. I'm not too afraid. Why? They played Atlanta last week. That's the only reason they are the number 1 pass defense. Atlanta did not throw the ball at all, so I'm not really looking too hard into the defensive stats for Carolina. I just think Shaheed, I loved his output last week, right? He had 6 targets, 5 catches, 89 yards, a touchdown, and he almost had a second touchdown. They just called him like he didn't get his second foot in, basically. So, yeah. I mean, he's running as the number 2, number 3 wide receiver in that offense. Michael Thomas, he didn't look bad. Obviously, we all love Chris Olave. But Shaheed's the big play guy. And, let's not forget, not that he's going to get it, but he's going to have 2 to 3, 4 return touchdowns this year as well, which isn't the worst thing to just have that ability for a big play on your team. So I just think this game's going to be close. I think the Saints, they're going to be in it. They're going to be throwing, whether it's to lead or just in a game where they're going back and forth. So I think Shaheed's a great flex play if you're looking for upside. Maybe you're projected to lose to your opponent, or maybe you just have a really safe rest of your roster and you're going for an upside play.
Yeah, I think you give somebody with that speed an offense that's going to want to pass the ball. I mean, he's going to be hitting a home run, in some of these games. And, you put him in this one and, the amount of targets that he got too, that's even if he doesn't have a 70-yard touchdown, he's still going to give you something. But if he does, then, I mean, congratulations. You probably just won your week if your flex is getting 20, 25 points. So
easily. So who is your number 3 player of the week?
All right. So my next guy, and this kind of depends on the health of one of my favorite players, but for this game against the Falcons, I'm going A.J. Dillon, running back for the Packers. Did not have a great week last week, did not look great. Quadzilla is really a wintertime player when Lambeau Field gets cold and the defenses are tired, and he can smack them. So this early in the season, he doesn't always produce, but if Aaron Jones is out, I mean, he is going to be the running back who gets the bulk of the carries. I mean, I love Emmanuel Wilson and what he did in the preseason, but I think they're going to go with a trusted guy in A.J. Dillon, who is actually a decent pass catcher. Like, he's made some grabs that for a guy of his size and kind of with his profile, you wouldn't think of him as being able to catch the ball. So it's only a 40.5 point over under. So it's not projected to be a huge scoring game, but if he's going to be the starter and he's going to get, 15 to 20 touches, I mean, that's a great floor. And then if he gets in the end zone, I mean, you're looking at a great play. So anytime you've got a starting running back who's going to be the guy, I think that's somebody worth putting in your lineup.
Yeah, that's a good call. I didn't really think about A.J. Dillon. I think because I don't really roster him much. But yeah, if Aaron Jones is out, that's a great call. Like you said, I mean, even if the Falcons win this game, it's going to be a back and forth game.
Yeah.
And I think A.J. Dillon's going to get the touches. And you're right, in that offense, they're going to manufacture a couple screens or a couple swing passes to him, and he's probably going to get 3-4 catches, which is just free points for a running back. So
yeah,
I totally agree. My number 3 this week, this one is on the edge. I think week 1, I don't think you would have allowed this guy to be called a flex player, but I think week 2, based on his performance, I think we can call him a flex because I don't think everyone's going to be starting this guy. And that's going to be Mike Williams of the Chargers. He's just such a boom bust player that he is so hard to rely on.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to bank on my favorite team, the Tennessee Titans, being absolutely terrible at pass defense again. And there's something about it, man. Like, Austin Eckler is probably not going to play, doubtful at practice on Friday. So unless he miraculously suits up, the Titans have a pretty good run defense. I mean, they really shut down Jamal Williams last week. So I think the Chargers are probably going to score some points. It's going to be through the air. And I could just see this being one of those 5 for 105 and a touchdown Mike Williams kind of games. It's no more than a gut call. It's not really based on what I saw last week where he just had a pretty mediocre performance. He missed some snaps even, but I just think is a blow-up week for him.
Yeah, and, as a guy who has struggled with injuries, week 2, he's still healthy. He's one of those players too, where it seems like if he's on your bench, he goes off. And if you put him in your lineup, he doesn't produce. And this is a week where I think a lot of people are going to be like, well, he didn't play good last week, so I'm going to put him on the bench. And, those are the plays that you always kick yourself over. God, I started him last week. I knew I should have done it again and had some faith. So, yeah, give me some Mike Williams.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the tight end and quarterback portion of the show. Basically, we're each going to do a QB and a tight end that are kind of on that bubble of should we start them, should we not? Maybe it's a streaming option. Maybe it's a guy. You have 2 quarterbacks, you're deciding between them. So, Andy, why don't you kick us off?
So we'll start off with the tight ends, and this kind of depends on if Travis Kelce's playing, but if he's out again, I think Noah Gray is a solid play this week. He didn't perform great last week. I mean, we had the other tight end wound up scoring the touchdown, but he was still in on 88% of their snaps. So he's the guy who's in the most plays. There were so many drop balls in that game. Patrick Mahomes didn't play his best game, even though he had some great moments. It's just a weird kind of Super Bowl hangover thing. So I think the Chiefs are going to bounce back against the Jags. I don't think the Jags defense is super great, and they're definitely going to be scoring a bunch of points. So, I would be willing to start him again if, maybe you had Kelce on your roster, you have a tight end who, didn't perform at all last week and you're looking for somebody else. I think Noah Gray is a pretty solid play. Just with that high over under, then there's a way better chance that he gets a touchdown compared to some of these other games. And usually at the end of the day, if you're looking to stream a tight end, you're just praying for that touchdown.
What about if Kelce does play? Who's your other streamer option you think you might be?
So he's kind of on that stream bubble. He was definitely drafted, but didn't have a huge game last week, and that'd be Evan Ingram. The Lions the Lions had 7 targets and 7 receptions to their tight ends against the Chiefs last week. So 7 for 7 is looking pretty good. It's that same high scoring game. I'm, maybe spoiler for later for a game that we're looking to target, but anytime you have such a high over under, those are the players that I want to look for in these kind of flex streaming positions. Evan Ingram is such an athletic guy. He was a 1st-round draft pick, and it looks like they're trying to get him the ball too. He might be, by the end of the year, the number 3 target on this offense. He and Zay Jones, or if Christian Kirk comes back, it's going to be Calvin Ridley, and then it might be all these guys kind of there in the middle. So that's basically my case for him is love the matchup, love the player. So put it together, it's a win.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I like Evan Ingram as a player. You drafted him to be your starter. I'm really not too concerned about week 1. I don't think really too many tight end streaming options has really popped up yet as someone you're feeling good about. Last week was freaking terrible, man. All the studs were out. Like TJ Hawkinson's really the only guy that's showing up right now. But, we get Kelce pretty much most likely. I think he's expected to play, and Andrews hopefully this week. So hopefully we can kind of return to some bigger tight end performances. My tight end play of the week is going to be someone who, A, you probably didn't draft, and you could definitely go pick this guy up, and that's going to be Hunter Henry, Patriots tight end versus Miami. Pretty high over under for a New England game. I mean, 46 points. Now, I'm sure that most of that is coming from Miami, but I mean, New England fell behind last week and they were still able to put up a decent point total against the Eagles, who have a fairly good defense. So just watching Mac Jones last week, I think he looked good enough, and he featured Hunter Henry like more than I think you would think, right? 5 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown. Like, that's good in a game they're probably going to have to come from behind or at least keep up, right? I mean, maybe they're not going to come from behind, but they're going to be chasing points. So just like, the Jags playing the Chiefs, get someone who's got to throw a bunch and you can get some free tight end catches.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots looked a lot better than I thought they would last week, especially, they didn't run the ball super well, but Mac Jones looked good. I mean, Hunter Henry, he might be one of their best players on offense. He's always been a good player. I feel like he's just been in some situations where he wasn't given the amount of opportunities. So there were other good playmakers on those offenses. And now it's one where you don't maybe have that guy to step up, and, he has that opportunity to step up and take on that role. And, I like Hunter Henry for the fact that, you might pick him up this week as a streamer, but you might just keep him for the rest of the season. And he just might be your guy. Like, I could see him finishing as, a top 8, top 6 tight end.
Well, most of the time, like, the best tight ends in the NFL, Kelsey, Andrews, like, they're the number one option on their team. Yeah. Maybe Hunter Henry is like a budget version of that, where I don't think we've seen a New England wide receiver really take over as the number one option. So if Hunter Henry can be the number one passing option, it doesn't mean he's going to be tight end 2, but that could easily lead to tight end 7 this year or something.
Yeah.
So
for a guy you pick up off the waiver wire to then be one of those top guys, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. So who's your QB for the week, Andy?
So I'm riding with him again. We're getting back on the Goff train. Last week he didn't have the most fantasy points. He finished his QB 18, but he still threw for the 6th most yards. It's just the only one touchdown hurt him. And now he's playing against the Seattle Seahawks, who just allowed a Cooper Kupp-less Rams to go for 330 yards against them. And so I think that the Detroit passing offense is going to be better than the Rams passing offense without Cooper Kupp. I think most people would agree with that statement. So I think Goff is going to be able to throw for a bunch of yards, and I think that touchdown regression is going to come. If you throw for, over 200, 250 yards, you usually expect at least 2 touchdowns. So I would not be surprised if he winds up with 3. I love Amon-Ra. I don't mind Josh Reynolds this week. I'm riding with the Lions. It's a high over under at 47.5. And it was pretty historically low scoring first week of football. It was, some weirder games. I think there's some like 55 or 56 touchdowns scored last week, where in previous week ones, I think last year's was in the 70s and the year before was either high 70s or low 80s. So, we could have a bounce back this week with a lot more scoring. And I think this is a good game to look at for that.
Yeah, the touchdown montage was short last week on Red Zone. I'm going to say that, man. I actually watched it. That's how I know it was short. Yeah. I usually don't watch the whole thing because I'm like, I'm over this now. But that thing was over in like a couple minutes. And I was like, oh, that's right. Like, people didn't score that many points. I love it, man. I think I'm actually going to talk about this game in a little bit. So I'm totally with you. I would expect him to throw for a couple touchdowns. I think we might see Gibbs get one. That's just a shot in the dark, man.
Love it.
But I think Gibbs might get one. Amon-Ra is too good. And Laporta and Gibbs, they're just going to come along. So I'm totally with you. My quarterback this week is going to be someone you're going to love to see this, man. Jordan Love. And I don't feel – here's the thing. I don't feel amazing about it, but he looked pretty good last week.
First ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I don't think the Bears are that good, but – you got to give him a little credit. He threw for 3 touchdowns, 245 yards last week. He had a couple rushes. He had 3 for 12, which isn't anything crazy. Mm-hmm. But he's definitely going to run for a couple touchdowns this year. He's not an unathletic guy. So I think he's going to get some running depending on game script. I don't think he's going to be chasing points. I just think this game's going to be back and forth. And so a back and forth game, like they're just going to be in it, and he's not going to be up. He's not going to be trailing, letting the pass rushers just pin their head back. I think it's just going to be a balanced game. He's going to be able to play his way. And I think at the end of the day, he's probably in for, 200 something yards, 2 touchdowns. I think that's a great streaming option. Like, we're not talking about the studs. We're talking about options if, you bench someone, or you didn't feel the Deshaun Watson game last week. And you're like, dude, I'm not doing that again. Or I don't know. I mean, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah. And, Christian Watson still might be out this week, but the Packers offensive line is a great offensive line. I mean, everybody's healthy. Bakhtiari's back to his Pro Bowl self. Elgin Jenkins is out there. Like, it's probably one of the best pass blocking lines in the league. And even without, that speedster on the outside, I think Dobbs is a very capable receiver. Jaden Reed's coming along. Musgrave was looking good. So, I mean, as a Packers fan, I love this pick. And I think against the Atlanta pass rush, I think he's going to have a lot of time to make stuff happen. So, it just makes
the best defensive player on the Falcons is one of their corners, but I'm not really too concerned with any Packers wide receiver getting locked down. Like you said, I think the one positive about Aaron Rodgers leaving is that I think LaFleur gets to be a little more Shanahan-y, where he just gets to just call the plays. And he's like, hey, Jordan, throw it to that dude, man. Don't go out there and make it your own, where it was a Rodgers offense, where this is where I just feel like he's running the plays. And if he can stick within the script, I think he's not a terrible play. So I know you kind of teased it earlier, but what is your game to target this week?
Sweet. Yeah, so that is going to be the Chiefs-Jags with a 51.5 point over-under. Like I said earlier, I think the Chiefs are going to bounce back whether Kelsey's there or not. And I think this is just going to be a high-scoring game all over the field. I don't know if I could recommend any Chiefs wide receiver to play. You have no idea who it's going to be. They all played pretty bad last week. I'm sure one of those guys is going to have a great game, but I don't really want to take the dart throw and risk it when there's so many options there. But Noah Gray, Isaiah Pacheco getting a good bulk of the receiving work. I mean, he had 4 receptions, which, you factor in McKinnon or Edwards-Helaire even as more of a pass catching back. But the fact that they were targeting him in the passing game, I think, is big. So he's a guy I'd be looking to start too. And when you have an over under this high, you have so much better chance of getting a touchdown. There's probably going to be a bunch of yards. So just throw in players from that if you're starting to get desperate.
Yeah, just going down the list, definitely, Mahomes, Kelsey, Zay Jones. I still feel good enough about throwing Kirk out there. I think I would give him a bounce back week.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ridley, Evan Ingram, Lawrence, Etienne. That's a lot of guys from one game. So I'm totally with you. I'm very excited to watch the Chiefs offense with Kelsey back and kind of just give those wide receivers. I think they had so much pressure last week that I think that's where some of the drops came from. And let's see what happens when the defense has to pay attention to Travis Kelce and there's not as much stress. It's not week 1. Travis Kelce's out there taking the attention. And like you said, I don't know which one to start, though. I'm definitely don't feel good about playing any of the guys. I think I would lean Sky Moore if I had to play a guy. But also, if Tony just caught any of those balls, he definitely was the most targeted wide receiver in that sense. But I can't do that.
And he's so talented when he gets the ball in his hands too. Rashee Rice looked pretty good. He had the touchdown, but I think by week 4 or 5 we'll know, and especially when Kelsey's back, he just opens up that offense so much more. But still, if you're really looking to gamble or take a dart throw, you could throw one of those Chiefs wideouts in there too, because somebody's going to have a touchdown, maybe 2 of them.
Yeah. So moving on to my game to target this week, we already mentioned some guys from this game, but Seahawks at Lions, 47.5 over under. We all remember last year, 48-45, the Seahawks won. It was just an absolute shootout. I do not anticipate that high of a score because that is so crazy. That, you can't predict that.
90 point over under.
Yeah, but I do think the 47 is a fair number. I think I look at that number, and I guess I would probably take the over. The one thing that worries me is Seattle's offensive line. They signed Jason Peters, which if you're signing Jason Peters, that never makes me feel good, especially if you're doing it out of necessity. Jason Peters either loves football or that dude broke. I don't really know which one it is. But just going down the list in this game, I mean, I would feel comfortable playing Metcalf, Lockett, JSN, Kenneth Walker, both Lions running backs, Laporta if you have to, Josh Reynolds if you're playing in like a 2 or 3 flex kind of league. Obviously, Amon-Ra, Goff, Geno. Like, that's the entire team for both of them. Like, I really think you could make the argument for any of those guys. And not to use like some sort of like crux argument, but it is inside in Detroit, which is nice. We had some rainy games last week that definitely ruined some over-unders and ruined some offenses. So an indoor game is safe, and I'd feel pretty good throwing most of those guys into my lineup.
No, I'm, being in Louisiana as opposed to Montana, I can actually play a little DFS, and threw a DraftKings lineup in today. Had Jared Goff, DK Metcalf, Amon-Ra in there. I'm looking to make another one. Going to throw in some Gibbs, maybe a little Tyler Lockett. So, I think that's a great game to target, and I would definitely take the over.
Yeah, that's a great game to like double stack too if you're doing DFS, where it's like you do Geno and Metcalf, but then you also get Amon-Ra as well and kind of stack the overs with each other. So I love it, man. Andy, thanks for hopping on from your hotel room, man. What a treat to get to see your hotel room. Look how clean you are. Look at that bed.
I'm not going to pan around and show you the rest of the room, but this section behind me is looking pretty good right now.
I love it, man. Well, thank you guys for tuning in for a little Flex Friday. We're going to try to do this every week. Give you guys some matchups to target in your flex. Definitely hit us up in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm going to keep saying Twitter, dude. Hit me up on X. Just sounds so freaking stupid. And technically, it's still called twitter.com. If you've noticed, if you type in twitter.com, you go there. So I'm going to go with that for now. But Andy, thanks for hopping on, and we will see you guys next week.
Thanks for having me.